An imbalance of neurotransmitters can lead to problems with mood, memory, addiction, energy, and sleep. The human body is composed of roughly 86 billion nerve cells or neurons, and these brain cells communicate with each other via chemical messengers called neurotransmitters. For a chemical to qualify as a neurotransmitter, it has to meet certain criteria. It must be found and produced inside the brain, and there must be receptors specific for it alone. A simple analogy for the system of neurotransmitters and receptors is like a lock and a key system. Scientists have identified over 100 neurotransmitters and believe more will be discovered. There's more than one way to categorize the known neurotransmitters. One common way to classify them is by their chemical structure. This puts them into categories like amino acids, peptides, and monoamines. Another way is to categorize them by their function, whether they're excitatory or inhibitory. Inhibitory neurotransmitters decrease the likelihood that a nerve impulse will fire, whereas excitatory neurotransmitters increase the chance. However, this division is not clear-cut, since some neurotransmitters can either excite or inhibit depending on the type of receptor that's available. Neurotransmitters regulate your mood, motivation, cravings, energy, libido, and sleep. They control your ability to focus, concentrate, learn, remember, and handle stress. In many ways, they shape how you live your life and who you are. They send messages to your autonomic nervous system, which controls involuntary actions like breathing, heart rate, and digestion. Abnormal neurotransmitter activity is responsible for many nervous system diseases and psychiatric disorders. Neurons don't touch each other. There's a microscopic space between them. Thousands of neurotransmitter molecules are packaged into small sacs on the end of neurons, and they get released into this space. The neurotransmitter molecules then have the potential to bind with receptors on the adjacent neuron. This is how the cells communicate with each other. It's estimated nearly 90% of us have subpar neurotransmitter levels. Lifestyle factors play a role in this. Chronic stress, poor diet, environmental toxins, alcohol, nicotine, caffeine, and drugs, both prescription and recreational, all are major culprits. Underlying health conditions like hormone imbalances, chronic inflammation, thyroid disease, and blood sugar disorders can also cause neurotransmitter imbalances. You can be genetically predisposed to certain neurotransmitter imbalances. And lastly, there's an entire class of prescription drugs and over-the-counter remedies that work by altering the neurotransmitter levels. For example, drugs that are dopaminergic work by increasing dopamine activity, while those that are anticholinergic block the synthesis of acetylcholine. You'll often read about neurotransmitter imbalances, low neurotransmitter levels, or neurotransmitter deficiencies. We use the term, but it's technically not accurate. A better phrase would be abnormal neurotransmission activity. By recognizing the symptoms of the abnormal activity of the most influential neurotransmitters, you can then take the appropriate steps to bring balance to your brain. There's no reliable way to measure neurotransmitter levels in the brain, and there's no scientifically accepted norm as to what the level should be. What is known is that certain clusters of symptoms are linked to below-average neurotransmitter activity. Each neurotransmitter is part of a neurotransmitter system, and this includes the neurotransmitters themselves, their receptor sites, and the neurons. So if you see a phrase like a neurotransmitter imbalance, it can mean many things are happening. There can be too little of the neurotransmitter being made, or its formation can be inhibited. There can be too few receptor sites for the neurotransmitter to bind with. The neurotransmitter receptors might not be working well. The neurotransmitter might be being broken down too soon, or the neurotransmitter is not being appropriately recirculated. There's over 100 known neurotransmitters, but just a handful of them do most of the work. While all neurotransmitters are important, the big four are serotonin, dopamine, acetylcholine, and GABA. These are responsible for most mood disorders and problems with memory and focus. It's important to know where your imbalances lie before you start taking measures to rectify the situation. Many brain and memory supplements include ingredients like amino acids, herbs, and vitamins, that are designed to boost the production of one or more neurotransmitter. Many drugs, including antidepressants, also work this way. But there's a problem here. It's the shotgun approach. If you don't know which neurotransmitter you need to boost, you might be taking substances that are not doing any good or could even be making you worse. Of all the neurotransmitters, serotonin has gotten the most attention. Serotonin is called a happiness molecule because it's essential for a positive mood. Low serotonin levels are linked to the most common mood disorders like anxiety, depression, eating disorders, insomnia, obsessive-compulsive disorder, and seasonal affective disorder. The most commonly prescribed antidepressants are selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, or SSRIs, and these are believed to help depression by increasing serotonin. However, it's not fully understood how the SSRIs actually work. Symptoms of low serotonin can include binge eating, carbohydrate cravings, digestive disorders, hypervigilance, insomnia, low libido, low self-esteem, and negativity. Men and women manifest symptoms of low serotonin levels somewhat differently. Women are more likely to experience mood disorders and carbohydrate cravings, while men are more likely to be impulsive, have attention problems, and drink alcohol in excess. Tryptophan is the amino acid precursor or the building block of serotonin. It's found mainly in protein-rich food like meat, eggs, fish, and dairy. So theoretically, eating tryptophan-rich food should raise serotonin, but the relationship between serotonin, tryptophan, and food is not straightforward. Unexpectedly, both tryptophan and serotonin levels drop after eating a meal that contains protein. It turns out protein blocks the synthesis of tryptophan into serotonin. Eating carbohydrates separately with no protein at some of your meals or snacks allows the tryptophan to enter your brain and to boost the serotonin levels. Another surprise is tryptophan supplements work better to increase serotonin than tryptophan found in food, because like most amino acids, they need to be taken separately on an empty stomach to be properly absorbed. Other supplements that can raise serotonin include B vitamins, curcumin, L-theanine, magnesium, omega-3 fatty acids, rhodiola rosea, and SAMe. 5-HTP is often recommended to increase serotonin, but it's not the best choice. A review of over 100 studies on 5-HTP concluded there's still no real evidence that it alleviates depression. But even more important is it's not intended for long-term use and should never be taken with antidepressants, sedatives, or natural remedies that can increase serotonin, like kava, valerian, SAMe, or St. John's wort. When taken together, these substances can lead to a potentially serious condition called serotonin syndrome. Daily exercise, sufficient sleep, and exposure to sunshine can also increase serotonin levels. Dopamine is quickly gaining on serotonin as the most talked about neurotransmitter. It's being called the motivation molecule. It provides the drive and the focus you need to get things done. Dopamine is so critical to motivation that dopamine-deficient mice become apathetic to the point where they literally starve even when food is readily available. Dopamine has another important role as a brain chemical. It's in charge of the body's pleasure and reward system. It's released when your needs are about to be met, and it delivers a feeling of satisfaction when you've accomplished your goals. If you've lost your zest for life, or you find yourself engaging in self-destructive behaviors to feel good, your dopamine might be low. Signs of low dopamine include apathy, inability to experience pleasure, low energy and motivation, and low libido. A dopamine deficiency can manifest as a lethargic or apathetic form of depression, unlike the anxiety-ridden depression linked to the low serotonin. Many people self-medicate with addictive substances like caffeine, alcohol, sugar, nicotine, and recreational drugs to improve their dopamine. Others get their dopamine fix from behavioral excesses of all kinds. Too much shopping, sex, gambling, video games, and thrill-seeking behaviors. Fortunately, addictions and risky behaviors are not the only way to increase the dopamine. You can increase the dopamine naturally with the right foods, supplements, and lifestyle changes. The amino acid tyrosine is a major building block of dopamine, and it must be present for dopamine synthesis. Tyrosine can be found in most animal food products. It's also available as a supplement. Besides animal food products, other foods that increase dopamine include apples, avocados, beetroot, chocolate, green leafy vegetables, nuts, oatmeal, and seeds. Two of the most popular beverages, coffee and green tea, also increase dopamine. While these drinks offer significant health benefits, be mindful caffeine is easily abused, and the addictive tendencies are the hallmark of low dopamine. And caffeine depletes GABA, so it should also be consumed with L-theanine to prevent this. There's plenty of supplements that can increase dopamine naturally also. An excellent supplement to start with is the L-tyrosine, the precursor to dopamine. Other supplements that increase dopamine are acetylcholine, curcumin, ginkgo biloba, mucuna pruens or the velvet bean, phosphatidylserine, and uridine monophosphate. Bacopa monnieri is a traditional Indian Ayurvedic herb, and it helps to normalize dopamine production up or down as needed. This makes Bacopa an excellent choice for balancing the dopamine levels, especially for those who suspect they have too much dopamine. Healthy lifestyle activities like physical exercise and meditation also increase dopamine, and since dopamine is released when you accomplish a goal, taking on a new challenge helps to raise the dopamine levels. Break down your long-range plans into short-term goals. Then, every time you tick off a goal on your to-do list, you get a little dopamine boost. The herb polygala is considered to be the will strengthener by the Chinese, as they say it helps you to gain the motivation and drive to complete the tasks on your to-do list. Acetylcholine is the first neurotransmitter to be discovered. It's essential for learning and memory. Symptoms of acetylcholine deficiency are typical of senior moments: struggling to remember, focus, follow plots, and find the right words. But these symptoms can occur regardless of your age. Acetylcholine levels are significantly lower in Alzheimer's patients. Acetylcholine activity is the target of Alzheimer's drugs, which attempts to slow the progression of cognitive decline by blocking the breakdown of acetylcholine. If you're low in acetylcholine, you might find yourself craving fatty foods. If so, pay attention. Your brain is urgently telling you something. The best way to increase the acetylcholine is to quit a low-fat diet and start eating healthy fats. Alarmingly, the brain starts to digest itself for the raw materials needed to create the acetylcholine when you don't provide it with enough of the right fat. The precursor to acetylcholine is choline, a nutrient found mainly in high-fat dairy products, fish, meat, and poultry. The best source of choline by far is egg yolks. If you're a coffee drinker, consider switching to tea, as this slows the breakdown of acetylcholine. Not all forms of choline supplements effectively raise acetylcholine levels, but there's a few that do. The alpha GPC form, which occurs in human breast milk, readily enters the brain. It's been found to improve memory and cognition in Alzheimer's patients. Another form of choline that increases acetylcholine is cytocholine. Cytocholine also increases blood flow to the brain plasticity, and the capacity to grow new brain cells. It's used therapeutically to treat a wide range of serious brain disorders, including age-related cognitive decline, dementia, Alzheimer's, and substance abuse. Other supplements that naturally increase acetylcholine levels are huperzine A, American ginseng, and guatacola. The racetam nootropics work by altering acetylcholine levels in the brain. The last tip for increasing the acetylcholine is to avoid anticholinergic drugs. These drugs destroy the acetylcholine, and they're surprisingly common. A good rule of thumb is any medication that starts with anti is likely to affect the acetylcholine levels, like antibiotics, antihistamines, and antidepressants. This includes over-the-counter remedies for allergies, insomnia, pain, and acid reflux like Benadryl, Nytol, Tylenol PM, and Tagamet. GABA is a neurotransmitter that's been dubbed nature's Valium for its positive role in relaxation. This brain chemical normally inhibits the activity on an as-needed basis, but when you're low in GABA, your brain can get stuck in the on position. Typical symptoms of low GABA are being easily stressed out, overstimulated, and overwhelmed. Other signs and symptoms of a GABA deficiency are lying awake with racing thoughts, feeling dread for no particular reason, and experiencing heart palpitations, cold hands, and shortness of breath. A low GABA level is associated with anxiety disorders and panic attacks, as well as physical disorders with emotional components like irritable bowel syndrome and Crohn's disease. You may be drawn to unhealthy ways to increase GABA, such as reaching for high carbohydrate food, alcohol, or drugs to relax. But there's healthy supplements that can do the trick. Food sources of GABA include barley, beans, brown rice, chestnuts, corn, kale, potatoes, spinach, sprouted grains, sweet potatoes, and yams. Fermented foods like unpasteurized yogurt, kefir, sauerkraut, kimchi, and miso also raise the GABA levels. GABA supplements are available, but they might be of limited use, since theoretically GABA is too large a molecule to cross from the bloodstream into the brain. Though it seems GABA supplementation works well for some people, these may have a leaky gut barrier or blood-brain barrier, which can be a sign they need to treat their gut with L-glutamine or colostrum and remove foods that might be causing a food sensitivity, or foods that are not organic and high in pesticides and chemicals like glyphosate. The only way to know for sure is to try pure GABA and see if it helps you. If supplemental GABA doesn't work for you, you can consider taurine. This is an amino acid that activates the GABA receptors in the brain and encourages the formation of GABA. Probiotic supplements that contain Lactobacillus rhamnosus markedly improve GABA levels. Other GABA-boosting supplements include magnesium, L-theanine, kava, and passion flower. If you live where you can buy picamillan, you might want to try this. It combines GABA with niacin chemically to create a compound that more readily enters the brain. Picamillan is also considered a smart drug, as it helps to boost memory, focus, and overall mental function. All kinds of exercise can increase GABA, but yoga in particular stands out. One study found a single 1-hour session of yoga increased GABA levels by 27%. Comprehensive analysis of neurotransmitter testing concluded there's no connection between the level of neurotransmitters found in the urine and those found in the brain. This makes sense when you consider neurotransmitters generally don't cross the blood-brain barrier. By and large, neurotransmitters created in the brain stay within the brain, and those created elsewhere stay there. For example, 95% of your body's serotonin is produced in your intestine, and that's where it stays. For all these reasons, assessing symptoms is still the best way to determine the status of the neurotransmitter levels. Neurotransmitters are chemical messengers used by the brain to communicate with each other. They exert a great deal of control over many aspects of life. By recognizing the symptoms of abnormal activity of the most influential neurotransmitters, you can take the appropriate steps to bring your brain chemicals and life back into balance. Fortunately, there's many natural ways to balance the neurotransmitter levels with food, supplements, exercise, meditation, and other healthy lifestyle adjustments. To learn more about neurotransmitters, check out my series, Know Your Neurotransmitters. To book a consultation or learn about herbs, supplements, and natural treatment plans, check out my website.